Believe in Bigfoot, Dogman, any cryptid? Are you skeptical?
Curious about the supernatural, conspiracy theories, the unknown? Then come join us as we explore facts, tall tales, and encounters on Creatures and Curiosities.
Hello and welcome to Creatures and Curiosities. I'm David.
And I'm Jake.
And in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the Wendigo.
Who is terrifying.
He's a very frightening thing. And one of our listeners wanted to make sure that we never referred to the Wendigo as a cryptid.
Right.
And so that it's a mythological creature or, an evil entity of some sort, but they believe that it's real and that there is purpose behind the story.
Right.
And so whether you believe that it actually exists or not, it was a lure to get people away from greed and gluttony and other, sins of the flesh. So we're not going to refer to this guy as a cryptid in this particular episode.
Right.
By the very definition of cryptid, it probably does fall under a cryptid.
I would say so.
But out of respect for the viewpoints of some of our Native American listeners, we won't say it's a cryptid. We're just going to say that it is a lore at this
more
point.
More than a campfire story to them.
Right.
It's a very real thing.
It is a very real thing, kind of like the skinwalker.
Right, exactly.
It's the same basic premise that there's a purpose behind the lore. Where, we love monster stories.
Oh, yeah.
Love the Rougarou, love the Lizard Man, love things like that. Those definitely fall under cryptid.
Right.
There's no evidence of them. We can't ever say that, somebody will say, I saw it, et cetera, and might even have footprints, like in the case of the Lizard Man. How do you deny that big old lizard foot in the mud, that there was nothing really there? But nonetheless, those all fall under cryptids. The Wendigo and the Skinwalker, there's more to the story, and I think that we're going to try and touch on that today.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the basic description of a Wendigo. First off, and one of the things that I wanted to say is there's so many different names or ways to say it. I've watched a lot of shows, a lot of documentaries. Some people call it the Wendigo.
Which is how I usually say it, yeah.
Putting the emphasis on the first syllable. Other people call it a Wendigo, which I called it in our Skinwalker episode. I called it that. And so I think both are correct, but I think the more correct one, or the closest translation to what it originally started as, is the Wendigo. Putting the emphasis on that first syllable. So that's what I'm going to call it for the remainder of the show, is a Wendigo. So the Wendigo is a mythological cannibalistic monster, or it can be an evil spirit, depending upon that particular belief. And this is in the tradition of the North American Algonquian-speaking tribes, and most of those were up in the Canada area, specifically like the Northeast Canadian.
Cold, heavy snow.
Yep. And then those kind of filtered down into the United States as they settled into the Great Lakes regions.
Which, if you're out in the woods and you see or hear a Wendigo, that's scary enough. Now, can you imagine if you're in like knee-deep snow?
Oh, yeah. You can't even run from
you're
it.
You're done for.
And they can.
Right.
They are adapted for that. So it's mostly associated with winter. It's described as either a beast that stalks and consumes humans, or it can also be a spirit that possesses humans and not an actual entity in and of itself. It can cause its victims the feeling of insatiable hunger, the desire to eat other humans, and a propensity to commit murder or just to do taboo, heinous things.
I think that's what makes this one scary is it's not like some of the other cryptids or monsters or whatever that we've touched on where there's, like with the Skinwalker, it could be a good thing. Or not the Skinwalker, the Wampus Cat, excuse me.
Yeah.
Where it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. There's nothing good about the Wendigo.
There's nothing
It's
good about it, no.
only out to get you and feed its hunger.
It's definitely an evil entity of whatever proportion you want to believe it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's either a spirit that's going to take you over and make you the creature or the beast, or it is an actual beast that's coming after you to eat you.
Either way,
It's definitely not a good thing. Some of the legends will describe the Wendigo as this emaciated figure with ashen, gray flesh, almost as though, it's rotted. It can have sunken eyes or, again, glowing eyes.
Isn't that a weird thing that all these things, it has to lend towards it being evil?
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know, because any cryptid or creature that we talk about, this is something that they all have is glowing eyes.
Right. And even in the movies.
Right.
When you're watching, you can go way back, 60s movies and stuff. It was still always the glowing red eyes of Rosemary's Baby or Damien, in The Omen.
In The Omen, yeah.
Where he looks and they get the little glowing, fiery eyes, So, yeah, there's something about eyes, I guess, that just show evil. That you're almost like looking through their soul into the depths of hell.
Or maybe because they're soulless.
Soulless,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Yeah, because they can either be glowing or black, right?
Right.
The black eyes, that's always creepy too. But so it has sunken or glowing eyes, big, sharp, yellow fangs, usually crooked, kind of like our gnome episode where they talked about the jagged, crooked, filthy yellow teeth. Where obviously it hadn't been brushed in, 30 years plus. It has claws, obviously, to grip its prey. The lips are generally chewed up or missing entirely because it's eaten them. Yeah. And you know how you get sometimes in the winter when your lips are chapped and you're using your teeth to kind of peel the flesh off of them? Well, in this particular case, I think he just gets so hungry that he just grabs his lips with his teeth, and so they're usually bloodied or missing. Well,
I think about completely. Like watching The Walking Dead, where you see the zombie with its top lip gone, it's just the teeth chattering as it's coming at you. Right. That's kind of what I picture is this thing with. It's got to be horrifying. It's got to be horrifying.
It is. It is a visually frightening thing. I think about stuff like. I don't want to get into it because we'll do another episode on Dogman. But, you think about Dogman and how terrifying that looks, right?
These guys are just like, you know what?
But
these guys are
cool.
so obsessed.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Every time we're bringing up the Dogman as much as we can. No, but it is pretty cool. Yeah.
You think about, you look at it, and a werewolf is a kind of an awesome looking being. Yeah. So is Bigfoot. And
Lizard
I can only
Man
imagine Lizard Man and Wampus Cat with the 6 legs.
Yeah.
These are things that you would look at. And though you'd be terrified.
Right.
And run for your life, which would probably spark the predator.
Yeah. The hunt is on at that point.
The hunt's on while you're running. But this creature is literally probably frightening to look at.
Yeah.
So it says in different legends, it can be hairless which is what I see.
Right.
Okay? Every time I think of a Wendigo, this is what I would picture, is that it's hairless, with rotting flesh, and the skin is stretched over the bones because it is supposed to be a creature that is emaciated, it's starving, it has an insatiable hunger.
Right.
And so in my mind, I would think that this is something that would be extremely thin, almost like dying from malnutrition and starvation.
Yeah.
And so that's what I picture. And the bones, protruding, like some of the actresses in Hollywood.
Exactly.
They weigh like 90 pounds and you see their collarbones and all their ribs. And that's kind of what I picture, is that this thin, almost elastic type skin is just stretched over a skeletal thing, where, I don't know, that's how I picture it. But then other lores say that it may be covered in fur. That one I don't get.
Yeah, that doesn't really fit with.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I didn't do enough research to figure out, which Native American tribes actually thought that it was fur covered. But it does say that some believe that it is a furry beast. So it could have pointed ears or horns or antlers like a deer. And again, I don't like that one.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's not what it is.
Right.
But in my mind, I picture that horrifying, almost like troll-looking, gangly.
Yeah, those overly long arms.
Yeah, with this no hair on its head and missing lips and
like you said, it's hunched, so it's like its spine almost looks like it's got, spikes stripped down its back because of how stretched the skin is over it.
Like the original Chupacabra.
Yeah, something like that.
That's what I'm picturing. But some lore say that it's got the big antlers. And I know that there's been movies made where they show it with antlers. I know there's been a lot of drawings and photographs where it's like dancing around a fire or something, and it always has the big antlers on its head. And I don't buy into that one, but you know what? It's not my lore to play with. But when I picture a Wendigo, it's just this tall, emaciated, nasty looking thing, So in most of the lores, it always has a foul odor. And that odor can usually be detected by humans before they even see it. So you're out in the forest and you just smell something.
Yeah, I would assume rotting flesh. Yeah.
Rotting flesh, yeah. So I would imagine if you smell that, it's time to
get out of there.
Get out of there because something bad is coming your way. Some of the lores say that the Wendigo is a giant creature standing upwards to like 15 feet tall. We've talked about some big cryptids in the past, right? 10 feet tall, I think, is about the largest.
Yeah. Bigfoot.
Right. There's been reports of the Rougarou being as tall as 10 feet.
What was the lizard man?
The lizard man was about 7.
7, okay.
Yeah. And then Jersey Devil, usually anywhere between 5 and 7 feet, but the one guy reported the 10-foot tall one that went across the road.
But still,
But 10 feet tall is pretty big, but this guy goes 15.
Yeah.
Now the Kraken's got him beat, with 100-foot long tentacles.
The size of a small island.
Yeah. But this creature probably is one of the biggest ones we've talked about to this point. So if you can just imagine being out in the forest and you smell something rotten coming your way, and then all of a sudden here comes this 15-foot tall, emaciated, starving thing salivating, looking at you that you're the next
with
meal.
No lips.
I can't even imagine.
No.
How horrifying
that
would be.
You got to think that size and its shape, it could just hide behind a tree.
Yeah. And when we get into some sightings later, I'll kind of touch on that, But the other thing about it is it's not just 15 feet tall, but it can get to pretty good sizes because the lore is that it's never satisfied.
Right.
So let's say it eats a kid and then it grows proportionately. So now it's hungry again. Kind of like when you go have Chinese food, pot stickers, and an hour later you're starving.
Well, that MSG plugging you up.
Yeah, it's like that's what this guy deals with, right? He eats something and then he's still hungry.
Now,
and so they go out and they eat more and more and more, and then it proportionately grows. Now, probably because I don't know that it changes its emaciation.
Right.
It must just grow in height.
And just stay lanky and gangly.
Stay lanky, gangly, and just keep getting taller, as it's eating.
And did you find in any of the research if it goes a while without eating, if it's, lack of a better term, shrinking in size?
You know what? That's a good question. And no, I did not see that anywhere. Nobody's ever addressed that. But it would make sense.
Right, because if it just kept growing, you'd have 70-foot.
Right.
Which would be
even more frightening.
Right.
But I would imagine that because it lives in cold environments and it's always starving, that if it isn't killing, it probably is kind of like shriveling away.
Right.
I mean, it just kind of makes sense. Otherwise, you would have this 9,000 foot tall Wendigo that's just done nothing but eat, and it keeps growing. So I would imagine it would have to come back in size when it's not eating.
Right.
Yeah. So they say that the Wendigo has exceptional sight, exceptional hearing, a keen sense of smell, as well as super strength and speed. And because they live in cold climates, it's known to be able to traverse snow quickly, which is what you kind of said right at the beginning. Could you imagine trying to run from it if you're knee-deep in snow? Well, it's equipped for that. Big gangly feet, big long legs, and it just tromps through the snow. But it also has, speed that's far superior.
And I mean, as you know, living in Montana, you don't even have to be, you could be ankle deep snow.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough to get there.
I go out and feed the horses and, like you're saying, maybe mid-shin.
Yeah.
And I'm tripping and falling and you can't get your foot up out of it. And
right. Now you're trying to sprint away from a 15-foot.
For your life. Yeah, it's a frightening concept.
I mean, it has every characteristic to be the perfect hunter as well.
Which is exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
Between the eyesight, the hearing, the sense of smell, it can smell you in the forest, then it can see you, and then it can chase you.
And then it could grab you, and you can't do anything about it because it's
got
strength.
Claws, and so you're just kind of screwed,
right.
if it's coming after you. But it's known to live in cold climates amongst the woodlands and specifically like the Great Lakes areas of both Canada and the United States. And some lores will describe the Wendigo as a malevolent spirit rather than a physical presence, which we kind of touched on earlier, and that the spirit itself exists looking for humans that have displayed like greed or done something that's taboo. That's the main thing. Like if you partake in cannibalism,
right,
you're completely susceptible to possession from the Wendigo.
That's its whole forte right there.
That's its whole forte. And at that point, you've just opened yourself up to it. But there's other things like greed and taking things in excess. And like I said, I think these were initially like lessons that were trying to be provided, to people to not do those things, or you could be taken over by the Wendigo. So some of the ways that it can possess you is through biting. So the spirit itself bites you and then can enter into your body. And another way is through your dreams. And I don't know what kind of dream you have to have
exactly.
in order to invite this malevolent spirit into your soul, unless they're dreams of greed, gluttony.
Yeah.
And,
is it something that it already sensed you? Like, let's say you're one of those greedy people and you're out in the woods and it senses you. Now you go back home, so it can, because of its excellent hunting abilities, now you go to sleep. Now it could track you down and come into your dreams, essentially.
That's assumably what's going on.
Because, I would assume if you're a greedy person, you're not going in the woods. You're not going to
if you think about back when the lore was originating,
right?
People had to hunt, right? People did go into the woods.
Right.
People did all kinds of stuff in order to survive, and especially when you're thinking about cold weather environment. Because remember, this comes from the areas that are heavy in snow, heavy winter, which is why the Wendigo is associated with winter. And so I think I don't want to jump out there too much with this because this is just my idea, but it's kind of like the concept of conservationism now. So let's say you go pheasant hunting and you're only supposed to take, depending on your region, right? And what state you're hunting and stuff, you're only supposed to take 3 birds. But 3's not enough for you, because you're hungry.
Yeah, you're hungry.
So you
a big family.
You smoke 15 birds, So that's greed, gluttony. You're taking something in excess.
Right.
And so something as simple as that, I think, opens you up to a possession from the Wendigo.
It would make sense, too, in cold areas where that type of hunting is less bountiful.
Right, which we're going to get into later when we talk about sightings and stuff. I'm going to talk about a couple of deals that kind of go along those lines, that because they're starving, they do things. And in the lore, it doesn't matter your reason. And that's the key. It doesn't matter why. If you do it, you're screwed by the Wendigo. In today's day and age, we try and say, they stole, baby formula but they had a reason for it. Well, back when this lore was designed here, didn't matter why you did it. The fact is you shouldn't have done it. And because you did it, you're opening yourself up.
There's no gray area. It's black and white.
There's no gray area, right? No matter what your reason for it is, if you did it, you're now susceptible to that possession. But once possessed by the Wendigo, your person becomes susceptible to cannibalistic ideation, deranged or violent behavior, because you're kind of like no longer in control of your own thoughts.
Right.
So the Wendigo is taking you over, and eventually it completely takes you over. So maybe you had the propensity to commit murder. Okay, so you got possessed by the Wendigo, you go out and you just randomly kill someone because you feel like you needed to. And then eventually that comes into, maybe I really just kind of need to eat this guy too, So now you eat him, and eventually the Wendigo takes you over completely, and you're no longer a person anymore. A lot of this stuff says, when you're reading these lores, that the Wendigo doesn't lose cognitive thought. So if you're believing that it is a person that's been taken over by a Wendigo, you're still that person. You're messed up.
Right.
You're violent. You may become cannibalistic or murderous, but you still have human thought process. But I think there's a line that can be crossed where once it's taken you over to the point of no return, you're gone. You're a lost soul.
Game over at that point.
And it's game over. And now you're just a Wendigo and you have no human characteristic at all left. Yeah. That's just one lore. You know, I mean, there's different ways to look at stuff. So getting into kind of the history of the Wendigo is part of the traditional belief systems of the Algonquin-speaking tribes. And I may butcher some of these names, so bear with me. Some of the tribes would include the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, the Cree, the Naskapi, and the Innu. And most of those were in the Canadian regions of the Northeast. They did specifically, like we know the Cree, move down into the United States. And of course, over time, they passed this information on to the white man that came and, infiltrated their lands and whatnot. And so the white men ended up believing in it too. So there's non-tribal belief in Wendigo, and there's tribal belief in Wendigo. It all kind of stems from the same stuff, though. And so as you look into the different beliefs and the different legends, different lores, they can be of non-Native American thought.
Yeah.
Because, we love to throw things into it too. It's like we've discussed in other cryptids. They get information like the French come in and they talk about, the loup-garou.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, other people are saying, well, yeah, but what about the werewolf? And then you start mixing traditional things. And so I'm sure there's some of that has taken place in the Wendigo as well.
And I know we talked about it. I think it was in the Skinwalker episode, but you got to think back then where it's not like us where I could just pull my phone out and Google whatever I want, whenever I want. But you get, the white man coming in and he's sitting down with a tribe. They have their circle. In that circle, I'm sure, is the greatest of warriors and elders. So they probably look at these guys with respect because they're like, yeah, these guys are great warriors. And then to see them tell them with fear in their eyes, hey, when you guys are out there, there's this 15-foot thing that runs around and eats people. Stay away from it.
Yeah.
Don't try to kill it because you can't. And if you smell this, just run away. You probably tend to believe that if you're looking at them and you think of them as great warriors and you see the fear in their eyes about it and you're like, well, they're probably not BSing me. They're probably telling the truth here. And then, like you said, that gets spread around into their own thing.
Yeah, and that's their homeland and they know the area.
Yeah.
And, we just got here. So, you take heed to those kinds of
exactly.
warnings. And then you keep that lore alive by telling more people, right?
Right.
And this is one of the things that we did talk about in prior episodes, and that is, this is how cryptids, mythological creatures, and beings exist to begin with. Somebody saw it.
Right.
Right? Somebody saw something and they talked about it, whether it became exaggerated over time or whatnot. I don't think that most legends are based on a straight up lie. Like, I just made something up, you know, and now it took. Because what has happened over the course of time is that somebody speaks of this legend and then other people see it.
Right.
And then confirm it, and then it continues. And so that's why we've always hated, the misidentification factor. And every time something is tried to be debunked or something, it's like you're taking the word of people and just throwing it in the trash.
Yeah.
And say, nope. It never happened.
You're an idiot. You don't know
idiot.
Right. You don't know what you're talking about.
I don't like that because everything started from a story that had purpose.
Right.
And even if it didn't exist, let's take the Wendigo. Let's say it doesn't exist at all. There was a purpose behind the story, and that was to prevent people from becoming greedy, horrible people.
Right.
And so they scared them into trying to be good. Same with the Rougarou. Same exact thing, right?
Yeah.
If the Rougarou doesn't exist, which I'm sure he does.
Oh, he does.
And I think the Wendigo does. But if he didn't exist, it still had purpose. They told people, don't break Lent and kids don't go out and do stupid things because it's going to get you. But then you can also say that, but then there's thousands of people saw it too.
Right.
And so, in my opinion, that's the way this Wendigo story is. It had great purpose when it was talked about, but it's also been seen by so many people that it has to exist.
There's got to be some validity to it. Exactly.
It has to be out there. But anyway, going back to, its origins, each one of those tribes that I mentioned had a different name for this beast or this spirit. But the source of the English translation, Wendigo, that we now say, actually came from the Ojibwe word Wendigo, and that's Windigoo. So then the English took their version of it, we turned it into Wendigo.
Right.
And that's what we know it as today. It's also believed that the original term came from the Proto-Algonquin term Wintequa, which may have meant owl. And it's funny how owl, there must be, and I'm not Native American.
Right.
And I don't know the significance of owl, but this is not the only thing. Remember, the Skinwalker started out as like an owl, right?
Right.
And so an owl must be something, I don't know, what, creepy, evil?
Yeah.
Spiritual? I don't really know.
Well, they got that
significance.
What's that? And obviously this is a whole other thing. Won't get into it, but that like Bohemian Grove thing where all the high-ranking politicians and stuff go to, and they worship that big thing, Moloch.
Oh, yeah.
Moloch is an owl.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something.
There's got to be something
evil
to
there,
an owl.
which would make sense because, I mean, when I see an owl, I think it's cool and it's good and it's an owl. But
I got barn owls all the time.
Yeah, I love them. But when you think of
how it translates
exactly, and then
all of these evil
there's
things.
Nothing good about a Wendigo, so
yeah,
or Skinwalker,
Yeah, so, they're both evil,
right?
So I don't know. I didn't do any research on that, so somebody can.
It's a whole other rabbit hole.
Send us an email. Tell us what the significance of an owl in Native American folklore is. Other terms, like I say, there's so many different pronunciations and terms to mean Wendigo, but they almost all roughly translate into the evil spirit that devours mankind is really what a Wendigo means.
And that's not ominous at all, so that's perfect.
Yeah, not at all. The first known mention of the Wendigo was back in 1636, and here we go with a little bit of history that maybe everybody hates, but
I like it.
Just going to be a second here. In 1636, this guy, Paul Lejeune, he's a French Jesuit missionary, and he is living amongst the Algonquin people in what's now known as Quebec. And he actually wrote in a journal that one of the women warned of an achin, and an achin is a Wendigo. It's just another term for it. It's a malevolent spirit that takes over people and causes cannibalism. So,
Yes.
it's a Wendigo. An achin had eaten some of the tribal members and would eat a great many more, if not called elsewhere. And so that's the first writing about a Wendigo. So that dates back precursor to the Jersey Devil and stuff. We're getting back there in the 1600s. The Wendigo itself was just a personification of cold and hunger in a time when your survival, you had to rely on sharing resources with other community members. So everybody's hungry, everybody's cold, they needed pelts, they needed shelter, they needed food. And, we live here in Montana, cold weather state. It gets cold.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm not a firm believer here in global warming or anything, but, there has been some climate shift. It's probably been warmer now than it was in the 1600s.
Right.
Just imagine, when you're living in 10-foot snow drifts, and there's no food and there's nothing, there's no vegetation.
You got a scrap of bread that you got to share with somebody.
Yeah. Right. So everything back then, it was survival of the fittest, really, is what it boiled down to. The term Wendigo, I think, served to them, as this cautionary tale about the importance of the community to guard against self-greed, selfishness, isolation, taking things in excess, not sharing, with the rest of your community. And basically it was a lesson, I think,
right.
How it started out. It was a lesson on how to be a community member and share your resources responsibly, share your food so that everybody had the chance of survival.
Yeah.
Not just the one that could go out and kill a rabbit and hide behind a tree and eat it himself.
And you got to think that although it started off as that cautionary tale, I don't think it's something that somebody just made up to scare the kids or other people of the tribe to not be greedy. Like, I don't think somebody came up with it out of nowhere. Like, you know what? I'm going to make up this 15-foot emaciated thing that'll eat you, take your soul, and then take over your body and make you eat people.
Yeah.
They had to have gotten it from somewhere.
That's a stretch, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a
it's like, you always think, where did Stephen King come up with all of his psychotic stuff that, movies that he's come up with? But yeah, I don't think that in that time that somebody would come up with something like that.
Yeah, because you have no baseline. He's got, thousands of baselines. He's got movies and books and all kinds of stuff that he can gather ideas from. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I know that the Wendigo served as a little bit of a warning, kind of like the Rougarou thing.
Yeah.
Right? So it served as a warning for their children to not wander off into the woods and get too far away from their families, because they were terrified that the Wendigo would, find them and eat them.
Yeah.
And so I know it did work out for them, as a warning. So the Wendigo is often seen as literally the embodiment of gluttony, greed, excess, never being satisfied. No matter how much it kills and consumes its victims, it has to continue doing so. And so the lesson learned there, obviously, is to not be gluttonous.
Right.
As I talked about earlier, the Wendigo doesn't lose its human trait of cognition or speech. And in some lores, and I think one that we touched on in the Skinwalker episode was Supernatural, the TV show.
Love that show.
They had the episode on the Wendigo, but the Wendigo tortured these women and posed as their husbands. And he was kind of like a shapeshifter until he was his own thing. And then it was kind of that emaciated thing running through the sewers, It is known to communicate with its victims. It can taunt them and threaten them and basically just make their lives miserable before killing and consuming them. I mean, that's literally like pure evil.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And when you look at some serial killers and stuff in today's day and age where they thrive on the fear of the victim,
that's evil.
That's as evil as it gets. You know, I mean, it's one thing, and this is going to come out wrong, but I'm just saying, you know, it's one thing to kill a person.
Right.
Right. I mean, you know, you're out there, you're mentally off. There's something wrong with you if you're out there killing people. But to enjoy the fear that you're instilling in somebody, they're feeding off of that. It's not the kill as much as it is the feeling of power over somebody, right?
Yeah. Which has got to be some form of demonic possession.
Yeah.
It has to be.
You're a Wendigo.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And, you know, let's face it, Jeffrey Dahmer, people like him who started off with it was usually sexual exploitation and stuff back, you know, when he first started, it was experimenting with boys and whatnot, and that turns to murder. Murder turns to eating them, you know, and you got to wonder who in their right mind, well, you're not. I mean, we all know that. That's silly to even say you're right. You're in your right mind. But who in their right mind would even do that?
Right.
You have to be possessed.
Yep. And it's like, if you kind of equate, you know, his build up to what you just said about the Wendigo earlier, it kind of fits that description. He started off small as he was getting it. It's almost like he became more quote unquote hungry. So then that turned into murder. Then that wasn't enough. So then that turned into eating. It's like he could never fulfill himself.
Right.
It's got to be possession.
Yeah. And possession by a Wendigo.
Yeah.
It's not just evil, it's a Wendigo. And it fits the lore perfectly.
Yeah.
That you become deranged, violent, and cannibalistic. And that's exactly what he did.
Yep.
And he's not the only one.
And he couldn't stop. Yeah.
There's been multiple cases, just even in the United States, of people eating people. Some were, and I even hate to say this, but like a matter of necessity, a matter of survival. Donner Party,
yeah.
The Andes mountain crash. There's multiple cases where people have had to eat somebody, usually the dead. I mean, they don't run down, kill a child and eat them.
Yeah.
You know, it's the people that didn't survive the crash or didn't survive just starvation. And then they get to that point where they eat them. And in this particular lore of the Wendigo, it doesn't matter what your reason is.
Yeah, they don't care.
And so you would take somebody like the Donner Party, and whereas a lot of people would say, well, they did it to survive. Well, it didn't matter.
Wendigo doesn't care.
Wendigo doesn't care.
Yeah.
You've jumped to cannibalism. That's taboo. It's like one of the worst things out there, right? It's one of the worst things you can do. In today's modern day and age, you would look at like child molestation, abduction, sex trafficking, all that stuff is like, that's all the buzzword today that's taboo.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, eating another human being is as about taboo as you can get, right? I mean, and so I think at that point, you probably have opened yourself up to an evil entity.
Right. That there's no shutting the door after that.
There's no shutting the door. Yeah, I think you've crossed the line. And
it's not like you were, okay, I'm going to, New Year's Day, I'm going to go off sweets for 30 days. And 20 days in, you're having a cupcake or something. And you're like, oh, well, I earned it at this point. It's a lot different than that.
It's a little bit different than that, yeah. So anyway, that's a basic history on the Wendigo. So also in some traditions, humans can turn into Wendigos when overpowered by greed, or if they have taken part in cannibalism, kind of like we talked about, no matter what the reason that they did it for. And it's also believed that humans can turn into Wendigos simply by being in contact with one for too long.
That one's interesting because how does that happen?
I don't understand that.
Because if you're in contact with a Wendigo, it's going to eat you.
Yeah, I almost didn't even put it in here, but if it's part of the lore,
it's part of the lore. You got to put it in
there.
Yeah,
it doesn't explain that. I don't think it's like a skinwalker or a rougarou where you're walking amongst them,
right?
And you don't necessarily know it.
Yeah, you're not meeting up with coffee for a Wendigo or with a Wendigo. You're
right. I mean, a Wendigo's a Wendigo.
Yeah, It's ravenous. It's gonna kill you if you come in contact with it.
So I don't know how you hang out with one for too long, but
it's not sprinting you down, then stops and goes, "Wait, Dave, is that you? Oh, hey, buddy, haven't seen you in a while." And then you guys talk about old times.
Exactly. I don't know how that could transpire, but it's there. So I threw it in.
If anybody has a reasonable response to that, let us know, because that one I was thrown off.
Can you be friends with a Wendigo and it doesn't eat you?
Yeah.
And then if you are, I guess you become one because you were friends too long or something.
Which, you deserve it, because who would be friends with a Wendigo? The things out there killing
you'd
people.
Be a nut. So getting into some of the sightings, let's look at that. There's not much that I can talk about here. So there are many accounts of Wendigo sightings, but I couldn't find any that had enough specificity to really talk about it. There's no evidence, no footprints, no castings, no fur or skin samples, or there isn't anything that you would get such as other cryptid sightings, right? But many people have said, we saw it and it was horrifying. It kind of makes me wonder if they did,
right?
Because how would you escape one? It runs faster than you, and
you have had to been in a car.
Yeah, something. I don't know, but many legends and stories have circulated over the years, and we're talking since the 1600s and to present day, about this mysterious creature that's encountered by hunters and campers in the forest in the upper region of Minnesota, which I believe there was and I might get corrected on this, but I know the Cree were in Montana, but I think they settled in Minnesota around the Great Lakes. And so that's where the lore would be, is all around the Great Lakes in the United States. And so it's still reportedly seen there today. And it was said that this creature could only be seen when it's head on, which we were talking about earlier. And I said, well, kind of touch on that. Because they're saying that it's so thin, so emaciated, that when it turns sideways, you can't see it anymore. Now it's kind of like, what's the name of that? The cryptid, the little skinny guy, the thin man, or
the slender man.
The slender man. Yeah. And kind of the same thing where he's almost two-dimensional.
Yeah.
Or something. So anyway, but these hunters and stuff, they do say that they've seen it, and when it turns and looks at you, you can see it. As soon as it turns sideways, he vanishes because, he's just nothing. There's nothing there. That's a frightening
Maybe that
concept.
lends more towards credibility of it being an actual entity rather than, not rather than a physical presence, but that it can go back and forth, I guess. Maybe that's it camouflaging itself.
Yeah.
And then when it's coming after you, obviously it's turning towards you, so then it's back in its physical presence.
Yeah, and you know what? I tussle with the whole idea of when they say it's not a physical entity, it is a spiritual entity.
Yeah.
I tussle with that because if it possesses you,
it's physical now.
Then now you're physical.
Right.
And so I believe in my world, the Wendigo would be a physical entity. It could be spiritual, but once it possesses somebody, then aren't you, you don't turn into a spiritual thing. You're still your human body,
Well, if it's not possessing you, then what is it? Can it go between those, or
I don't know.
To have that physical presence, would it have to possess somebody?
See, I don't know.
If someone does, let us know.
That's a tough one, but I do think that it is a physical.
Right.
I think that it is an actual creature that walks amongst us and preys on the basic sins of humanity. And it can possess you, but I don't know how. I don't. Well, the spiritual world is different anyway.
Right, than our world, exactly.
It's so far outside the realm of our own knowledge. I believe that you can be a physical entity and a spiritual entity at the same time. Yeah. Kind of like God.
Right. Yeah.
Getting into, when you're looking at Jesus Christ dies on a cross, but he is a spiritual entity as well. And so you could have that on the evil side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would certainly think Satan himself could probably transform in front of you. You could barely see him as a physical entity, but we also know it's spiritual as well.
Right.
I don't see any reason why a Wendigo can't be exactly the same thing, right? Just on the evil side. I don't know. I'm not an expert in in that field. But people that live in the area of like northern Minnesota, the Great Lakes, etc., they believe that when hunters and campers disappear, that they are actually victims of the Wendigo, which is frightening, to think that. Of course, we've said the same thing, that when campers go missing and stuff in the Sierra Nevadas and over in Washington and the Cascades, they're probably Bigfoot sex slave or something.
Exactly.
Something's going on. But yeah.
Well, I know we talked about it before too, with that map that displays like missing persons and national forests and stuff. And then if you overlay it with like, I don't know if it's mines or underground cave systems or a combination of both, but it almost perfectly, like the congested areas line up perfectly with that. I mean, maybe this is part of that.
Yeah.
In those areas.
It very well could be. I know that the Wendigo made a number of appearances in northern Minnesota. There's a little town up there. It's either Roseau or Roseau. And from the 1800s through about 1920, there were literally, thousands of sightings of the Wendigo. And every time that they reported it, an unexpected death followed, which it's kind of like, isn't that like a Mothman prophecy thing? When he shows up, something
bad's going to happen.
Is going to happen. The same thing was happening in Minnesota. They would see this Wendigo, and then within days, somebody died tragically. But after about 1920, it wasn't seen in that particular area anymore. Now, the Wendigos have been seen in northern Ontario, and in fact, they have an area there. They call it the Cave of the Wendigo. I guess that's somewhere near the town of Kenora, but they said that the traders, trackers, and trappers of that area, they've spotted the Wendigo for decades, and a lot of the people up there still believe that it roams the woods and the prairies of northern Minnesota and Canada.
To backtrack to that town that it wasn't seen after the 1920s anymore, you got to wonder what happened. Is it, you could what if it to death, but is it an entity that takes over a person and then once it doesn't get enough food, essentially, does it just finally die off and then the spirit goes away on to something else? Does the spirit die with it because it's in the body?
Yeah.
Does it die at all if it doesn't get...
My guess is that it doesn't die.
You would think so, right?
It's always on the prowl for bad people that are doing whatever they're doing. They're invited into their lives.
The actual physical person might be dead, but the entity's keeping the physical body alive.
Yes. That's what I would think.
Right.
Yeah. And, there is no rhyme or reason as to why, it's around for nearly 120 years, right? And then just gone. None of that makes sense to me other than it's either dead or it moved on or it was mass hallucination on the part of people for a while, and then everybody wised up and said, nah, this doesn't exist, and so they don't talk about it.
There's probably some hermit that lives in the cabin in the woods, and he's just a monster hunter. We'll never know about him. He probably took it down.
Well, and speaking of monster hunters, there is a story that I came across that it's like one of the most famous stories about Wendigo, and it kind of had to do with, which we're going to touch on in just a second, but the concept of the Wendigo psychosis, which is a syndrome that can happen, I suppose. But there's this Cree Indian, his name's Jack Fiddler, and he claims to have killed at least a minimum of 14 Wendigos in his lifetime. So they, technically, I guess they can be killed. So like in October of 1907, he and his brother Joseph, they were both tried for the murder of a Cree Indian woman. I think they strangled her. But they defended themselves in their court by stating that she was possessed by a Wendigo. And she was on the verge of transforming into one permanently. They said, we had to kill her before she murdered and ate other members of the tribe. And so they felt they did what was necessary. And apparently they had killed at least 13 other people.
Yeah.
And so, they were either nuts, and often people on the premise that they were Wendigos, or they were Wendigos and these guys were like the supernatural hunters of the day.
Yeah.
And so who am I to say which one it is?
They just made the mistake of killing her before the quote unquote transformation was complete.
Yeah.
Like, let's get ahead of the game before she becomes stronger, faster,
right,
and better. Let's just get rid of her.
Jack, who I guess he outruns the police or something, but he ends up killing himself. He committed suicide, I think, by hanging. Joseph did stand trial, and I believe he was sentenced to life in prison. At some point, they grant him a pardon.
I'm guessing based on age.
It was either going to be based on age or somebody believed the Wendigo story. I don't know. I didn't see the specifics on, why he got a pardon. But before he even learned of the pardon, he ended up dying.
Yeah.
He had tuberculosis or something. 3 days before they were going to release him from prison, if you can imagine, he dies. I find that to be a pretty cool story. I mean, sick and twisted, and people go, there's nothing cool about murder. But I mean, obviously these people felt that the Wendigo was a true presence.
Right.
And it was taking over people, and people were murdering other tribe members and trying to eat them. And this guy took it upon himself to see to it that that stopped. So the story itself is fascinating. Not necessarily the outcome of, the loss of life and all that kind of stuff.
Potentially murdering 14 innocent people.
Right, yeah. I mean, how many people died at the hands of communities and people?
Oh, yeah.
Werewolves and vampires and witches. And,
Salem witch trials, all that stuff.
Yeah, we've been burning people at the stake, cutting their heads off for centuries, thinking that they're some kind of a monster. I know that we tried looking up some recent sightings, and you found some on like YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, I found it's hard to tell. There's some on YouTube where it's, the title of the video is Wendigo Scream in the Forest. And this one, a guy was out and he's looking at like mushrooms or something. And then there's just this blood curdling scream. It sounds like an animal. And it probably goes on for like 4 to 6 seconds. But the last 2 seconds of the scream sound like a person.
Oh.
And the scream itself is terrifying. But the guy's reaction is what kind of threw me off. Because it screams. It's horrifying. And then he says something along the lines of, okay, time to go. And just casually turns around and walks away.
Oh.
Now, I get everybody reacts differently to things. But not even like a, holy, what the.
Yeah, which is.
All right, I'm out of here.
The normal reaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there was one that I couldn't locate exactly when it took place. The thing I found, the YouTube video looked like it was first put up around roughly 2 years ago, but I saw that the Travel Channel uploaded it like 4 months ago on their YouTube channel. There was a husband and wife in Kentucky, and on their security camera, they claim, and this is the one I showed you, they claim to have seen one. To me, I don't know. You can't really tell. It could be a person just walking weirdly. It's like a crackhead or something out in the woods of Kentucky. But, they had some people on there who were like, oh, this is clearly not a person. It's clearly some kind of monster walking around because it doesn't walk like a normal person. It's
it was kind of hunched over and it looked somewhat emaciated, but if
you've ever seen somebody on meth, exactly. They look exactly like that walking around. So it's movements to me. Of course, I've never seen a Wendigo, so I'm kind of talking out of turn here, but based on it being a prolific hunter, I would assume it could move somewhat athletically. It might be hunched over and gangly. This thing looked like it was struggling to move. It did. Like it was a person kind of doing the walk. So I don't know. But all the other stuff, that was the only one that was a actual video that I could find.
Yeah.
All the other ones were
hard to find on
screams
Wendigos.
and trail cam screenshots of something that, some of them looked Photoshopped. Some of them you couldn't even tell what it was.
Like we said, I think in the last episode, in the world of AI and CGI and all that stuff, it's so hard to tell anymore. And there's so many people throwing hoaxes out there that they're ruining it for everybody.
Exactly.
And I wish they'd stop.
Because I don't want people to think I'm dismissive of it because of how I just worded that stuff. I believe that that's out there.
Yeah.
I just don't believe the things I saw were the Wendigo.
Right.
I just, misidentification. I hate that word. Or it's somebody putting on a show.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's so hard to tell. And I don't think you're ever going to really get evidence of a Wendigo.
Right.
But so getting into just real quick, just because I discussed it earlier, there is this phenomenon called Wendigo psychosis.
Which is crazy that that's an actual medical term.
Yeah. And so the deal is that most science and medical professionals deny it. And they say it's not real, it's not a thing, it's not a syndrome, and it's a made-up term. Others, though, are saying, no, it actually has some validity to it. And there have been some cases on it, but case studies, they can't prove that it's an actual thing.
Right.
There's no, like if they did a CT scan or something, there's nothing in the brain that would indicate that that this actually exists as a actual medical condition. But Wendigo psychosis is said to create an intense craving for human flesh, or it can be just the fear of becoming a cannibal. And this psychosis, what they found, occurs in people living around the Great Lakes of Canada, ironically, right where all this started, and the United States. And Wendigo psychosis usually develops in the winter in people isolated by heavy snow for long periods of time. Well, in Montana, we called that cabin fever, right? You get a 12-foot snow drift and you can't open your doors, so you're inside until,
it's negative 20
melted
out.
off. Yeah, and it's negative 20 outside, and it's not going to melt off for a while, and you get cabin fever. You get sick of being inside. So this is basically the same thing. If you're in heavy snow for long periods of time, this psychosis can develop. And the symptoms are that you have poor appetite, nausea, vomiting, etc. But then they develop this delusion of being transformed into a Wendigo. I find that a little bit bizarre because if you didn't know what one was, how would you have a delusion of becoming one?
Right.
If you didn't know about it. But they found that these people that fall into this psychosis might actually start seeing people around them as being edible.
Which is wild to think.
And yeah, that is wild. But they do have there's several documented cases, right? But one of these documented cases was in 1878, where this Cree trapper, his name was Swift Runner, he actually suffered a severe case of what they called the Wendigo psychosis. He was married, father of 6 kids, and he and his family were starving during a particularly brutal winter, along with many other Cree families. Apparently, his eldest son died from starvation, which, is very traumatizing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And to watch your kids die from literal hunger must be horrible. But all of a sudden, he becomes afflicted with the Wendigo psychosis. And even though about 25 miles away, which, we make it sound like that's no big deal, like you could hop in your car, but, he would have been on horseback or walking on foot.
Right, in the middle of winter.
During brutal winter conditions. But he chose not to go there to try and get emergency equipment and food that was going to be provided for them. So what he ended up doing was he murdered his entire family, and he ate all of them. He ate 6 kids and a wife,
Holy moly.
Go figure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what would drive you to do that, but he did it. He confessed to it. And ultimately, he was executed by the authorities that held his trial. And we talked about like Jeffrey Dahmer and stuff earlier in the podcast. So clearly people, they must, I would say that it's a legit thing, right? I don't know that you can call it Wendigo psychosis or not, but it fits.
There's something there, yeah.
It fits, If that's what a Wendigo is, and it's an evil entity that possesses people, makes them deranged, violent, and cannibalistic, and these are case studies of people that became deranged, violent, and cannibalistic.
Yeah.
I'd call it Wendigo psychosis.
Oh, yeah.
The medical profession doesn't want to acknowledge that. Everything that I've read said, no, none of that's true. But clearly there's cases of it. So in my book, Wendigo psychosis.
Those are the same guys that write off the whole misidentification thing.
Exactly.
So I don't trust them anyway.
I don't trust any of those people. The only other thing really that I have, aside from the fact that there's a million movies out there.
Oh, so many.
Any movie buff that wants to watch stuff, there's Antlers, there's Wendigo.
Ravenous, there's all kinds of movies.
Yeah. There's a ton of movies based on the Wendigo. The episode of Supernatural.
Yep.
And what was the one that you said was like extremely violent?
Oh, yeah.
Frostbiter or something
The Wrath
like that?
of the Wendigo.
The Wrath
It's
of the
supposed to be
Wendigo.
like a horror comedy. I haven't seen it, but that was kind of the description of it, was that, that everybody dies a gruesome death except for like one person who has to defeat the Wendigo. So I'll be adding that to the watch later list.
Yeah, I'm going to have to watch that one. But anyway, anybody interested in Wendigo movies, there's a whole slew of them out there that you can watch. Can you defend yourself against a Wendigo? We've had this in multiple things, how to defend against a Rougarou, how to defend against, there was another episode that we did that, what was it, Skinwalkers?
Skinwalkers, yeah.
You really can't, Well, in this particular case, you kind of can't.
Just ask. Yeah.
It's as simple as that. What I did read was that a shaman may be the only person who can subdue or destroy a Wendigo.
And Jack Fiddler.
Yeah, and Jack Fiddler, right. Using either a silver, steel, or an iron bullet or a dagger, they say that if you can cut the Wendigo's heart of ice out of his chest and melt it or burn it, that would truly get rid of the spirit of the Wendigo.
That's what someone did to that one in the 1920s, probably.
Yeah. Now, you or I were not shaman or shaman, however people pronounce it different. We're not that. And I'm not generally carrying a silver bullet or dagger.
Yeah.
Probably not going to be able to fight a 15-foot tall Wendigo. But if you could, cut its heart out, pull that chunk of ice out of his chest.
Chuck it on the fire.
Melt it down, and you can get rid of it. So, but that's it.
There it is.
That is the only way to go about doing it. Okay, the last thing I have is there is one of our listeners on Reddit said that he wanted to set the record straight. He told me that he is a Native American and that he found it very disheartening to see that the lore of his culture was twisted and turned into creepypasta-esque cryptids, namely the Wendigo and the Skinwalker, because neither of those are cryptids. And he kind of wanted to get out there that when people do things that are taboo, they become susceptible to being overtaken by the Wendigo, and that the purpose of the lore was to convince people not to be greedy, selfish, and wicked. And that the Wendigo, the legend of the Wendigo, actually serves a purpose, and that it's not just to be labeled as a cryptid. So he says it makes him sad that people have taken that culture and taken the lore, and that it fades away into the ages without people understanding its true purpose. So I just wanted to throw a shout out to him that he did let us know what his opinion was on this. And I think in this particular case, we kind of agree with him that, this lore did have a purpose behind it, whether you believe it's true or not, that it was a good thing to get people to work together within a community and not be selfish and not do rotten things.
Right.
So anyway, if you're listening out there, we did touch on it for you. So anyway, I think that's all we've got. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to be talking about mermaids and sirens.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited about all of them. I say it every time, but I'm excited about this one.
That's the way it is. This is just fun to do. So anyway, until then.
That's it. That's all I got. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the show and you want to help us out, then go ahead and give us a follow, leave us a review, and don't forget to turn on the automatic download button so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And as always, if you've had any experiences, stories, thoughts, comments, or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to cryptidfanatic@gmail.com. Let us know if you'd like to be on the show or just have your story featured during one of our episodes.